My husband had an affair and even brought a child home, forcing me to raise him. I'd rather be widowed than divorced in this lifetime. Later, he was stabbed by that woman and ended up in the hospital. I set aside our differences to take good care of him. He was so touched that he was bawling. Smiling gently while slicing an apple, I said, "The doctor says you can't be agitated, so I have something to tell you. When you die, I'll use your money to support a few young men. As for your son, I'll send him to an orphanage. You can go in peace." Flex stared at me, unable to close his eyes even in death. Flex's lover, with a big belly, came to find me. Her first words to me were, "My due date is in 8 days. You come to the hospital to pick up the child, or I'll drop him." I was stunned. Her arrogance left me unsure who was the mistress. "What did you say?" I doubted my ears. "The kid is Flex's. He said I just need to give birth. You'll raise him." She spoke nonchalantly. I chuckled then. For real. It was too funny. I've seen mistresses trying to take over, and those just wanting money. But to give birth and hand the kid to the wife, absurd. Never heard of it. You just want Flex, right? Dirty man. He's all yours. Don't mention it. I stood up. Stop right there. The mistress was quite fierce. What do you mean? You don't want the kid? I was getting annoyed. I shouldn't have come to meet this woman. All because of my damn curiosity. I wanted to see what Flex's lover looked like. Turns out, she's a nutcase. What a waste of time. No, I don't want the kid or the husband. You keep them both. No thanks. You'll regret it. She glared at me, fuming. I glanced at her dismissively and left. On my way home, I called Flex. Told him to be home within 2 hours. To me, it seemed simple. Get divorced. Let Flex and the mistress with their kid get out of my life. I am capable of making money. I am beautiful. And I've had enough of Flex in these 8 years of marriage. But I never expected that what seemed easy would turn into the beginning of my nightmare. Not long after I got home, Flex's mom showed up first. "You know about Flex and Tina?" Flex's mom asked as soon as she walked in. That's how I learned the mistress's name was Tina. I scoffed. "Yeah, I know. She just met me at a cafe. The due date is in 8 days. Congratulations, you're finally becoming a grandma." She awkwardly grabbed my hand. "Shirley, listen to me. Tina promised me that the child will be yours once born. Though you didn't give birth, raising makes you the real mom. This child will be yours for life." I was shocked and forcefully pulled my hand away. What was she saying? A senior teacher spouting this nonsense. "Shirley, I know this is sudden." Flex's mom watched my reaction. "Let me tell you, Tina is carrying a boy." I nodded, laughing coldly. "Mom, you clearly knew about Flex's dirt for a while. You still want the boy to be legit, huh? Want to throw your grandson a coronation ceremony too?" Shirley, Flex's mom was furious with my sarcasm. "Don't be ungrateful." I laughed angrily. "Ungrateful? Are you kidding me? Your son cheated, messed around, and knocked up a woman. But don't worry, I will divorce him soon, so you can bring in the new daughter-in-law and grandson smoothly." "Impossible. Tina is not worthy of being in our family." Flex's mom looked disgusted. Unbelievable. She looked down on the mistress, but wanted her child. The shamelessness. I decided not to waste words. No apologies. Nothing to discuss between us. "Wait for your son. This is our matter. Let us solve it." She got agitated and pointed at me, spewing. "Shirley, you've been married to Flex for 8 years. Have you ever cooked for him? Ironed his clothes? I tolerated it all. But you wouldn't even have kids. You're lucky my son put up with you. Any other man would have killed you, understand?" I gritted my teeth. "Yeah, never cooked for Flex, never wanted kids. So what? I'm pretty. It's your son's fault for being cheap." She angrily banged the table. "Shirley, don't push it," I replied. "The one pushing it is you." Flex returned as we argued fiercely. Flex's mom grabbed her bag in fury and left with, "Talk to your wife yourself." Flex closed the door and smiled at me. My head buzzed with rage seeing his smirk. My anger spiked. "Divorce," I spat angrily. He smiled again, calmly. "Shirley, calm down." Flex's calmness enraged me more. I grabbed a pillow and started hitting him. "Calm. Are you kidding? You said you love me, then cheat. Knock up another woman. Take your so-called love and shove it. I don't want it." He let me vent. When I tired out, he spoke calmly. "Shirley, once the child is born, I'll send Tina away. I promise. No more contact with her. We've already signed an agreement. The child will be ours." I looked at him like a stranger. 9 years of knowing him, 8 years married. I thought I knew him well. Now I see how true the saying is. People can surprise you. "Flex, divorce." My tone was firm. He stayed gentle and patient. "Shirley, I love you. For you, I accepted not having kids. But I can't be childless. My hard-earned fortune can't end with me." I shook my head, resolute. "Flex, we've known each other for 9 years. Do you think Shirley, am someone to compromise. This isn't negotiable. Divorce. Shirley, he suddenly grabbed my arm. I stumbled into his arms. He stared at me, eyes sharp. We are not getting a divorce. His look scared me. Flex, let go of me. Are you crazy? He stared at me. Shirley, starting tomorrow, don't go back to the theater group. Spend the next few days catching up on parenting books. I'll hire a nanny and a postpartum care worker, but you still need to take care of the baby yourself. I felt like today was just a bad day. Everyone seemed to have gone mad. I pried his hand off. Flex, who do you think you are? You can't control my life. He sneered. I'd rather be a widow than get a divorce, he said slowly and deliberately. I shuddered. What are you trying to do? The baby stays. I know you're upset. Haven't you always liked that villa in the west side of the city? Once the baby turns 1 month old, I'll buy it for you, he said. I shook my head, yelling, Flex, this is ridiculous, totally ridiculous. I grabbed my phone and headed for the door. In a flash, Flex stepped forward and grabbed my hand. In my panic, I kicked hard, and my foot hit him right in the nether regions. He howled in pain and bent over, but still didn't let go of my hand. Shirley, you try leaving, just try, he said with a menacing look. I was terrified, kicking him frantically a few more times. Flex pushed me hard, and I stumbled back and fell by the door. Ignoring the pain, I got up, opened the door, and ran out. I dashed into the elevator as Flex chased after me, his footsteps getting closer and closer. I frantically pressed the elevator close button. The elevator door, like an old, dying car, finally started to close as Flex's figure appeared outside. I collapsed against the elevator wall in fear. The elevator door closed, and Flex didn't make it in. My legs gave way, and I slid to the floor. Even when I got into the taxi, I couldn't believe I had just fled from my own home. When the driver asked where to go, I burst into tears. The driver, startled, asked if I needed to call the police. I shook my head, crying, and gave my mom's address. Then I called my mom. Shirley, what's wrong? Trouble with the actors at the theater. Don't cry, my dear. Hearing my mom's voice made me cry even harder. Over half an hour later, I got home to my mom's place. Seeing my disheveled state, my mom pulled me into a hug. Shirley, what's going on? Come quick. My dad came running, a usually stern and quiet man. Seeing me trembling in tears, he quickly poured a glass of water for me. I finally managed to stop crying and told my parents about Flex. They listened patiently, but didn't speak for a long time after I finished. Shirley, go take a bath and change clothes. My mom broke the silence. I grabbed her hand. Mom, Flex, just go. The sky won't fall down, honey, my mom said gently. Go on, my dad added. I figured they also needed time to process everything. So, I wiped my tears and headed for my room. While I was almost done with my bath, my mom came in. Mom, I gasped, pulling a towel into the water to cover myself. Give me a minute. I'll be out soon. She ignored me, sitting by the tub. I'm your mother, you shy to show me, she scolded, looking at my body. Such a nice figure, what a shame to get stretch marks from having a baby. A bad feeling crept into my heart. Mom, I know you feel terrible, but I need to tell you the truth. All these years, I've told you to have a baby. You always said both of you were dinks, that Flex didn't like or want kids. But men can't be trusted. Shirley, you're too naive. Now Flex has a child with another woman. He doesn't want a divorce and wants you to be the mom. After thinking it over, I believe this is the best outcome. Mom, I smacked the water angrily, splashing her face. She stared at me, silent for a long while, then said, You've always been so selfish, never thought about others. Even now, you're still so headstrong. I broke down, splashing water and crying. Mom, how can you say that? Flex cheated. He had a child with another woman, ruining our love, betraying our vows. How can you say I'm being headstrong? I cried so hard I couldn't speak. My mom listened quietly, seeing how inconsolable I was. Shirley, tell me, after divorcing Flex, can you find a better man? I'm not asking you to settle, but you should consider your future. Think about your life ahead. Men get foolish when they're young. Who truly does not want kids as they grow older? Your dad and I thought this through carefully. My head felt like it was exploding. I asked, Mom, did you and Dad know about Flex long ago? She didn't answer directly, but her face gave it all away. Desperate, I asked, so you think I should accept this strange child and raise it happily? She sighed and got up. Calm down. Flex will come over later. I watched her leave the bathroom, shaking in the tub. It took a lot of effort to get out. Once out, I rushed to the door and locked it tightly. Conspiracy. This is a conspiracy. Everyone knows Flex has someone else outside. Everyone knows that mistress is going to have a child and give it to me. And I'm the last to know. This world is crazy, fucking crazy. I quickly changed clothes. Didn't even bother to dry my hair. and ran to the window. I looked at the height from the second floor window to the yard. It didn't seem too high, but when I actually climbed up onto the windowsill and saw the solid marble ground below, my legs started shaking with fear. No, I can't just jump recklessly. If I got injured, forget about the freedom I want. I might not even be able to get out of bed for the rest of my life. I climbed down from the windowsill, grabbed my phone from the bed. I decided to leave my mom's house right away. I won't just sit here and wait. I opened my bedroom door and walked out. Shirley, come here, sit down. Dad wants to talk to you, my dad said gently. My mom looked at me too. I paused for a moment. Dad, Mom, if you're asking me to accept Flex's affair, to accept that random kid, then I'm telling you, no way. My dad and Mom exchanged a look. We understand how you feel about Flex having a child outside, but you can't just see the downside. You need to consider your own circumstances too. I sharply countered. Dad, Mom, what circumstances? You just can't let go of Flex's money and the benefits he brings you. If I divorce him, your luxurious retired life is over. My dad got furious. Shirley, watch your tone. My mom was startled and hurriedly tried to calm my dad, giving me a look. Shirley, how could you say that? You're our only daughter. If we don't look out for you, who will? I felt there was no need to argue further. If they think this is really for my good, I should just leave. I walked toward the main door without a word. Shirley, where are you going? My mom panicked and got up to chase me. Let her go, and don't let her come back, my dad yelled, breathless with anger. Shirley, what are you doing? My mom grabbed me at the door. I felt so wronged. Mom, you and Flex are all in this together. No one's thinking about me. How can we not think about you? My mom's tears fell. There's always room for discussion. Why do you always act like this? Seeing my mom cry softened my heart a little. She pulled me back to the sofa. Then my dad and mom started their lecture. They said all I ever did was practice piano or sing, or do makeup. My dad blamed my mom for spoiling me. They said I spent money without a second thought, often spending tens of thousands on a single bag. Only Flex would let me spend like that. Any other man would probably even count every penny spent on groceries. They claimed since marrying Flex, his business prospered because of me. I was some lucky charm, and it would be a waste to let another woman benefit from my good fortune. Just as they finished laying out the dire consequences of divorcing Flex, he arrived. Being a business person, Flex handed over a property ownership certificate for a store and a set of keys. The store at that street, 60 square meters. Monthly rent brings in over 10 grand. The title is in Shirley's name. You can take the rent as pocket money from her. After that, Flex started apologizing and explaining about the kid. He said it wasn't my fault. He supported my artistic pursuits and couldn't bear to see me go through the pain of childbirth. So he found an easier girl to have a child with his bloodline. He swore he'd never divorce me, not in this life or the next. My parents were moved to tears. Even I was momentarily swayed by his emotional speech. Shirley, should you be grateful to this man who cares so much for you? Seeing my mom's hopeful look snapped me out of it. No, I wouldn't be grateful. Flex was hiding his deceit under the guise of love. If I accepted his so-called apology, I'd be letting myself be controlled by him forever. Any resistance from me in the future would just prove I was out of line. My dad spoke up first, pretending to be heartbroken. Flex, no matter what, you hurt Shirley by having a child with another woman. It damaged your relationship. Flex nodded eagerly. Yes, you're right, Dad. I was wrong. However Shirley wants to punish me, I will accept it. My mom quickly interjected. Shirley, you always said you didn't want kids. You'll regret that when you're our age. Flex was just thinking of you. You should appreciate that. Flex reached out and gently shook my hand. That I even listened to their performance showed I was being very responsible for my marriage. I pulled my hand back, took a deep breath. Flex, no matter how you justify it, it doesn't change the fact that you betrayed me. Stop explaining. I want a divorce. Right as I said that, my dad jumped up, pointing at me. Shirley, are you out of your mind? Dad, calm down. Shirley, Dad has high blood pressure, Flex said while pouring water for my dad. My mom shot me warning glances. I snickered. Fine, I'll leave. Is that good enough? I yelled, then walked to the door. Behind me, my dad shouted my name angrily. My mom panicked, and Flex shouted for my dad too. I slammed the door shut. I took a cab to a single apartment I bought before getting married. Sometimes, when Flex was out of town, I would stay there. Flex called right, but I rejected. To avoid incessant calls from Flex and my parents, I turned off my phone. Alone, I opened a bottle of red wine and drank until I passed out around 3 a.m. The next day at noon, I woke up with a splitting headache. Hugging my blanket, I spaced out for quite a while before reaching for my phone. I turned it on, and dozens of messages flooded in. Flex had gone crazy calling me all night long. I let out a cold laugh and opened the app. Flex had sent me countless messages. Annoyed, I clicked one open, and then I sat up, shocked. Flex said, "Shirley, Dad's gone, heart attack. I kept calling you but couldn't reach you. Your mom is also in the emergency room, too overwhelmed with grief. Call me as soon as you see this." My hands shook uncontrollably, but I managed to dial Flex's number. He picked up immediately. "Shirley, where are you?" "My dad, he is. I'll send someone to get you. Just send me the address." Flex's voice was calm and composed. "I'm at the apartment on the west side of town. You know it." I murmured, "How is my dad? Is he okay?" "Change your clothes and come downstairs now," Flex said. Over half an hour later, I arrived at the hospital with Flex. He took me to the morgue, where I saw my dad. He was lying there, looking peaceful. It felt like a dream. My feet were on the ground, but nothing felt real. The man who was yelling at me just last night was now dead. How could this be? It couldn't be true. I must be dreaming. Dazed and confused, Flex then took me to see my mom. She was lying unconscious on a hospital bed. The doctor, upon learning I was the patient's daughter, told me to prepare myself mentally. I thought the doctor was crazy. What mental preparation did I need? The doctor explained that when my mom fainted, she hit the back of her head on the edge of a cement surface, causing severe bleeding in the brain. The prognosis wasn't good. I stood there, too stunned to fully grasp what he was saying. Without any warning, my dad was dead, and my mom lay comatose. In one night, my family was shattered. Flex handled everything, running back and forth non-stop. I was too devastated to care about Flex's mess, much less return to the troop for work. A week later, my dad's funeral was done. In the hospital, my mom was still unconscious. More than half a month later, Flex transferred my mom to a top-notch rehab center for continued treatment. The new place didn't need me to stay and help, so Flex took me back home. Since my parents' accident, I hadn't been back home. As soon as I walked in, a middle-aged woman in her 40s came up to me holding a baby. "Flex, you're back." I had been overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow over my parents, both awake and asleep, so my mental state was very fragile. When I saw the woman standing there with the baby, I didn't react right away. "Honey, why are you spacing out? Come inside." Flex tugged at me. I stood there, dazed. I remembered Flex's mistress coming to me, saying she'd give me the child to raise. He pulled me into the room and hugged me. "Shirley, take a few days to rest well. The baby has a nanny and a nurse to take care of him," he said gently. "I don't want to raise someone else's baby, Flex." "Don't do this to me," I said, tilting my head back, tears streaming down my face. "Please," he sighed, lightly kissing my forehead. "We need a child. Listen, don't make a fuss anymore." After saying that, Flex left the room. I sat against the headboard for a long time. Outside, the baby cried incessantly as the middle-aged woman tried to soothe him. I stared blankly at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened recently in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. When I ran out of the house that day, my dad's blood pressure had spiked. What happened next was all according to Flex. He said my dad got too worked up that night, and the medication didn't help. He drove my dad to the hospital in a hurry, but my dad didn't make it halfway there. When they got to the hospital, the doctors said it was too late. Then my mom fainted, and the doctors and nurses immediately tried to save her. It all seemed fine, but something didn't feel right. My life had been turned upside down. The carefree Shirley from before was gone. Now I lived in constant fear. Flex went on frequent business trips. He was always busy with endless work. The child's constant crying was driving me towards a nervous breakdown. The nanny, like a robot, brought the child to me at regular intervals, saying Flex had instructed her to. I refused to touch the child. The nanny then dangled the child in front of me. I couldn't take it anymore and called Flex. I said I needed to move out for a while. Flex placated me casually and told me to be more patient, saying it would get better when the child grew older. I exploded on the phone. I told him I didn't like the child. He had to choose between the child and me. Flex was silent for a long time before hanging up. I took out a suitcase and started packing. Since he wasn't going to choose, I had to choose for him. I dragged my suitcase out of the room. Where are you going?" The nanny eagerly approached me. I ignored her and kept walking. Stop." Suddenly, the nanny's face turned stern. Before I could react, she rushed over, snatched my suitcase, and grabbed my hand. "What do you think you're doing?" I was flabbergasted and furious, trying to shake her off. The nanny was incredibly strong and slapped me hard, making me see stars. I fought back, but she overpowered me. She threw me into a storage room. Once inside, my heart sank. The old junk was gone, and thick padded walls surrounded me. All the windows were sealed tight. On the floor by the west wall were an iPad and several books. The boss says you can come out whenever you've thought it through. Oh, and those books and the iPad are all about parenting. Study them well. The nanny's voice came through a speaker. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I collapsed to the floor, shaking. I could never leave this house. I've been put under house arrest by Flex. At this point, even if I were foolish, I'd still know that something's up with Flex, and continued meaningless resistance would only lead to a more painful end for me. I forced myself to calm down, to mentally go over everything that had happened again and again. My dad's death definitely had some weirdness to it, and my mom ending up in a nursing home was probably part of Flex's plan too. Was it really as simple as not wanting a divorce? What was his real goal? I felt a shiver run down my spine. Time stretched infinitely in the emptiness and fear. I wanted to get out of this room, to see my mom, to gain my freedom, and more than anything, to return to the stage to sing opera. But now, I had no choice but to pick up parenting books and watch parenting videos. The nanny and the maternity nurse brought the baby in for about half an hour every day. Under their watchful eyes, I had to hold the baby. Holding him felt like holding an enormous caterpillar. The maternity nurse asked me a lot about parenting. I pretended to be a loving mother and answered her questions one by one. I thought I could get out of the storeroom soon, but I had underestimated this battle. A cunning businessman like Flex wouldn't easily believe I had suddenly turned over a new leaf. Seconds turned into hours, days into weeks. Flex didn't come home. The nanny and the maternity nurse watched over me all day. They wouldn't give me a phone or help me make any calls. I knew Flex had ordered that. He wanted to keep me locked up until my mental defenses completely crumbled. Only then would I be at his mercy. The weather turned cooler, and I had been locked in the storeroom for almost 2 months. I started feeling somewhat dazed. The most noticeable thing was my slow reactions. Sometimes when the nanny and the maternity nurse talked to me, I seemed to hear them, but couldn't quite understand. Some days, I even heard the little baby talk, constantly calling me mom. I was going crazy. Flex's mother had been coming over frequently during this time, but she treated me as if I didn't exist, focusing only on playing with her grandson. That day, it was drizzling outside. The nanny and the maternity nurse opened the door as usual and came in with the baby. I sat by the bed, staring blankly at them. The nanny called out to me. I continued staring blankly. The maternity nurse also called out to me. It took me a while to look up at them. The baby was nestled in the maternity nurse's arms, looking at me with big, round eyes. The child resembled Flex so much. I abruptly got up and walked towards him. The nanny and the maternity nurse watched me warily. I took 3 steps before my vision filled with countless gold stars, and then I collapsed. I finally met Flex. When I woke up, he was sitting by my bedside. Silly, not eating properly, you have low blood sugar. He reached out and pressed the call button, and the nanny soon brought a bowl of porridge. Tears streamed down my face. Honey, I was sobbing uncontrollably. Here, have some porridge first. Flex lifted me up and took the bowl from the nanny. Watching him gently and carefully, I wanted nothing more than to smash the whole bowl of porridge into his face, but I knew I had to hold back. Flex stayed with me at home for a few days. Seeing that I was still depressed, he said he would take me out for a walk. Inside, I was overjoyed, but I kept up the facade of not wanting to go out. Flex took me to the nursing home to see my mom. She was still lying in bed, and the doctor said her condition was uncertain. She might lie there for life, or she could wake up the next day. I watched the caregiver skillfully and quickly clean my mom's body, change her into dry clothes, and then give her a full body massage. My mom slept peacefully. She couldn't sense my presence, and I didn't know what the point of her living like this was. On the way back to the city from the nursing home, I leaned silently against Flex, crying. He hugged me, comforting me. Shirley, I've got it all under control. A few days later, he took me back to the theater troupe. The director greeted us warmly. Before I could say a word, the director congratulated me on entering a new life stage, and said that whenever I wanted to perform again, I could return to the troupe, and the roles would be mine for the choosing. I was extremely surprised. The director had always been a highly principled and strict person. How could he have changed so suddenly? Soon I found out the change was because Flex had sponsored the troupe with a large sum of money to improve its performance conditions. Everyone in the troupe knew now. Apparently, Shirley was the wife of entrepreneur Flex, and naturally, Flex's wife should go home and become a wealthy lady. A colleague who used to compete with me for lead roles looked at me with a mix of jealousy and disdain and said, Shirley, just go and enjoy being a rich lady. Leave the hard work of acting to me. Flex had cut off all my escape routes, Leaving the theater troupe, Flex was in high spirits. He drove straight there and showed me the villa he had bought. "We'll move here during the spring festival," he said, holding my hand as we entered the villa. On the first floor of the villa, there was a large Buddha hall. Looking at the solemn and majestic statues filled me with an inexplicable sense of oppression. "Why set up a Buddha hall at home?" I asked him. He had always scoffed at anything spiritual. "It's my mom's insistence. As people age, they start believing in this stuff." I didn't want to argue with her about it. "Shirley, come on, let's check out upstairs," he replied lightly. The second floor had the main bedroom and a children's room, which featured a big and a small bed. "When I'm not at home, you can sleep here with the baby. Oh, by the way, the baby still doesn't have an official name. Shirley, why don't you name him?" He patted my head and bent down to pick up a small toy that had fallen to the floor, placing it back in the crib. A real knife to the heart. I named the baby Kyle. Flex was very pleased with the middle name Lynn. His son, indeed destined to be exceptional. "Tina's gone to the US, and she won't be coming back," Flex mentioned casually but confidently. I believed that with his methods, Tina was nearly out of our lives. Yet, I felt no sense of triumph. His treating Tina like a tool for bearing children and then discarding her showed such extreme coldness and cruelty that it made my skin crawl. "Okay," I said, taking his hand proactively. "You can't betray me again." He wrapped his arms around my waist. "Silly wife, no one can take your place in my heart." If he had said this to me before, I would have believed him without question. Why wouldn't he love me? Back when I was the beauty queen of the drama academy, the guys who pursued me were like fish in the river. Flex had to use all his tricks to become my boyfriend. After we got married, his affection for me never waned. He didn't obey my every whim, but he did meet all my needs. But now, I don't believe it at all. He doesn't love me. Loving someone shouldn't be like this. Over the years, I was too confident and put all my energy and heart into pursuing my art. I never imagined that Flex would change one day and become so terrifying. "What do you love about me?" I asked this question while snuggling into his neck, my voice soft and a bit coquettish. Flex loved it when I acted cute with him. Sure enough, he hugged me tighter, his breathing became rapid, and his hands started wandering on my body. "Everything about you," he whispered in my ear. I wrapped my arms around his neck proactively, and then kissed him on the lips. He pushed me to the edge of the bed, and we both fell onto it. Just like before, we were in perfect harmony. After it was all over, he lay on top of me, his face deeply buried in my neck. "Shirley, let's go abroad during spring festival to relax," he said. I didn't reply, just patted his back lightly in the rhythm he liked. "No baby, just the two of us," he added. I gently agreed, and he kissed my lips again and again. A thought raced wildly in my mind. I want him dead. The first step of my plan was to get rid of the babysitter and the nanny. With those two plagues in the house, Flex knew my every move. To get rid of them, I had to be able to take care of Flex's son myself. That soft little baby was almost 3 months old, but he still cried so much, especially at night, sometimes crying for hours on end. Because the baby cried so much, Flex's mother's affection for her grandson was severely drained. Lately, as soon as it got dark, she'd grab her bag and make a quick escape. The nanny complained that this was the hardest baby she'd ever taken care of. I figured if Flex didn't pay her so well, she would have quit too. Parenting books and hospital experts said such babies are called high-need babies. For such kids, there's no solution but to endure it until they grow up. I started trying to take care of the baby. Flex was a bit surprised, or rather, he was skeptical of my sudden change. "The nanny won't stay with us forever. I'll have to learn to take care of the baby sooner or later," I said, with a tone that mixed grievance and resignation to fate. Flex was very satisfied with my answer. He looked at me and the baby emotionally and said, "Wife, you're working hard. Didn't you like that Chanel bag? I'll get it for you." I responded softly, continuing to soothe the baby in my arms, sneering inwardly. "Is it just enduring? I'm not afraid. No matter how hard it is, it can't be harder than my years of basic training on stage." Time flew by, and soon Flex's son was 100 days old. Flex's parents hosted a 100-day banquet at a hotel, and all the relatives were invited. Flex even invited my relatives. At the banquet, Flex was in high spirits, introducing me as the mother of the child. Flex's relatives all smiled without comment, while my relatives looked shocked. After all, my dad had just passed away not long ago, and now my child was 100 days old. It was quite a magical transformation. Flex comforted me not to mind what others said, that with time, the gossip would gradually die down. I showed magnanimity. "I don't care what they say. I'm not living with them." Flex's mother paraded around with the baby, receiving the well wishes from the relatives, with the nanny following closely. After going to just 5 or 6 tables, the baby started crying loudly. The nanny tried to soothe the baby, but the more she tried, the harder he cried. "Rachel, what's going on? I'll go see," the babysitter exclaimed. She usually didn't spend much time with the baby, but today with the boss present, she needed to make her presence known. The babysitter rushed over, took the baby from the nanny's arms, and the baby cried even louder. I glanced at Flex without showing any emotion. He frowned. "Shirley, you go soothe him," he finally said. I originally wanted to refuse, but looking at the babysitter, I had a sudden idea. I stepped towards her. "Rachel, let me try," I said. The babysitter usually didn't put me in her eyes. Seeing me trying to take the baby in front of Flex's mom and the nanny, she immediately felt she was losing face. "I'm already trying to soothe him. Why are you meddling?" she said angrily, turning away with the crying baby. This made Flex's mom lose face. No matter what, in front of relatives, I was the officially wedded wife. The babysitter might be good, but she was still a servant. "Rachel, give the baby to the lady," Flex's mom ordered. The babysitter seemed to have lost her mind. She hugged the baby and walked towards Flex. I secretly prepared my emotions. When I looked up at Flex's mom, my eyes were filled with tears. "Mom," I said softly, following Flex's mom as she walked back. "Rachel, what's wrong with you?" Flex's mom questioned angrily. "I just want to soothe the baby." The babysitter shook the baby, glancing at Flex. "Did you soothe him? Can't you see the baby is still crying?" Flex's mom looked at me. "Shirley, you take him." I reached out to take the baby, and just as the baby was handed to me, I stumbled. Then I fell heavily to the ground with the baby in my arms, scaring him into crying even louder. For a moment, everyone was stunned. I sat heavily on the ground, holding the baby securely. Flex reacted first. He picked up the baby and handed him to Flex's mom, before pulling me up from the ground. On the back of my hand, there was a deep pinch mark. "Rachel, what did you do?" Flex held my hand, furious. Rachel panicked, shaking her head desperately. "It wasn't me. I didn't do it. She fell herself. It has nothing to do with me." Relatives seated nearby were already craning their necks to see what happened. Flex's mom spoke up. "Flex, give Rachel her paycheck and let her go." The babysitter was fired. The nanny has learned her lesson and now treats me with much more respect. But I know that if one caretaker leaves, another will come to take their place, and they'll still be Flex's eyes and ears. So I had a talk with Flex, suggesting we don't hire another nanny for now. "You and Zoe are already exhausted with the baby. We need someone to help with laundry and cooking," Flex said casually. I said thoughtfully, "The baby cries a lot already. What if another stranger makes him cry even more? Let's wait until he's easier to handle before hiring a nanny." Flex saw the logic in my words, so the matter of hiring a nanny was postponed. I started treating the nanny exceptionally well, giving small gifts and taking over the night shifts to comfort the baby so she wouldn't get too tired. Her attitude toward me flipped completely. She expressed her gratitude often, saying, "Madam, you've finally come around. A husband as good as Mr. Flex is 1 in a million." I just smiled, thinking, it's like finding a monster wearing human skin with a flashlight. Step 2 of my plan was to find Tina. Luckily for me, when I was still figuring out how to proceed, Tina's friend reached out to the nanny, saying Tina wanted to video call to see the baby. The nanny reported it to me honestly. I stayed silent for a while. "Madam, I'll call Mr. Flex," she suggested. I sighed. She carried the baby for 10 months. She can have a look. She's abroad and can't come back anyway. The nanny worriedly asked, "What if Mr. Flex finds out?" "I won't tell him," I responded calmly. Tina called the nanny. Her hair was unkempt and she looked exhausted. It seemed she hadn't found the dream life abroad, but had fallen into a pit instead. I walked over on purpose and took the baby from the nanny's arms. Tina instantly lost it, yelling, "Shirley, that's my baby. Mine." I pretended to be surprised. "Did you forget? You said you'd give birth, and I'd raise him." Tina stared fixedly at the baby in my arms. I cooed to the baby, "I'm the real mother here. He'll call me mom, and you'll just be a stranger. Flex is my husband, and he loves only me. Shirley, don't worry, I'll take good care of your son." With that, I ended the call and deleted Tina from the nanny's phone, but I made sure to remember her number. "Madam," the nanny looked uneasy. "I've already been more than generous letting her see the baby," I said while gently rocking the baby. "Right, Zoe?" The nanny nodded vigorously. 3 days later, after getting a burner phone, I added Tina's friend. Then, I started waiting. Tina had always been impulsive and lacked foresight. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to me to declare war initially. Flex had sent her abroad, where she didn't get the life she imagined. With my provocation, I knew she'd try to find a way back. Once she returns, everything will be set. but I didn't expect the wait to last over 2 months. Tina's friend said they had lost contact with her for the time being. Within those 2 months, Flex went on a long business trip, and the nanny and I even went on a small outing with the baby. By then, the baby was much easier to care for, at least not crying endlessly through the night. Flex bought me some Chanel and a Hermes bag worth over 20 grand. I clung to his neck, appearing thrilled, but I secretly worried. What if Flex had caught Tina and the nanny talking and had completely disposed of Tina? I kept my anxiety in check and continued to wait. The nursing home called. My mom's condition hadn't improved or worsened. Flex said he was in touch with foreign doctors and would arrange for my mom to receive treatment abroad when the time was right. I did my best to please him. By the time the baby was almost 6 months old, it was cold outside. I had fully become a housewife, dedicating all my time to the baby. The nanny's presence was increasingly unnecessary, and Flex and his mom grew more pleased with me. Flex's mom mentioned once that we might not need the nanny anymore, as Shirley could take care of the baby well enough. Instead, she suggested hiring a cook. Flex neither agreed nor disagreed. I smiled and said our current arrangement was good, with everything revolving around the baby. One day, while the family gathered around the baby, a commotion came from outside. Flex frowned and got up, as I continued chatting and playing with the baby with Flex's mom. Then the door opened, and the nanny was struggling with a woman, Tina. "Flex, you liar!" Tina shrieked, barging in. "Give me back my child." Flex's face turned ashen. Flex's mom's expression also changed. I promptly placed the baby in Flex's mom's arms. "Mom, please take the baby inside." She barely had time to react, but took the baby and stood up. "Zoe, what are you good for?" Flex snapped at the nanny. The nanny looked utterly wronged. "I went out to buy groceries. She followed me back. I didn't bring her here." "Flex, you bastard. Give me back my child." Tina bellowed as she rushed at Flex, grabbing his hand. Flex, however, wasn't moved. He shook her off forcefully, sending her crashing into a wall. "Tina, leave my house immediately, or don't blame me for being rude." Tina glared at him. "You promised you'd visit me every month once I was abroad, but you lied. You abandoned me." Flex didn't waste any time. He called the property management, asking security to come up and get her out. "You can't treat me like this, Flex." Tina cried out in rage. After the call, Flex walked back to my side. "Shirley, I'm sorry. I didn't handle this well," he said, sounding a bit apologetic. I glanced at him, feigning a cold tone. "Then handle it now. I don't want anyone disrupting our lives, especially affecting my bond with the baby." Flex gently nudged me. "Go be with the baby." I then looked at Tina, giving her a contemptuous smile. "Shirley, Flex is my husband. Kyle is my son. If you know what's best for you, you should leave now." After saying that, without looking back, I walked toward the room where Flex's mom was staying. Sure enough, Tina lost it. She charged at Flex again. "Flex, you bastard. Do you dare to tell Shirley the real reason you don't want her to have kids? Because you can't stand her body not being perfect after childbirth. And after I had our baby, you never touched me again. You asshole, you bastard, bastard." Slap. A sharp, crisp sound of a slap. "Flex, that's my child too. You promised me 5 million. You tricked me into going abroad and then never gave me the money. You liar." Tina cried and made a scene. I walked into the room. Flex's mom was startled, but smiled awkwardly when she saw it was me. "Shirley, this is Flex's mess. He'll sort it out." I walked up to her and took the baby. "I understand." Flex's mom continued. "How did Tina get back into the country? And Flex, what's he thinking?" I didn't say a word. Tina went on for almost half an hour, until the security finally arrived and took her away. That day, the nanny was fired. That night, Flex's mom and I moved to a villa in the west of Beijing with the baby. Flex went to handle the situation with Tina. Flex's mom, feeling guilty maybe, kept on rambling. "We should have fired Zoe along with Rachel last time. How many of these housekeepers are really loyal? Tina must have given her some benefits, and she couldn't even tell who she's working for." I didn't respond. Flex's mom glanced at me. "Shirley, what are you thinking?" The baby was asleep in my arms as I gently rocked. "I just want to live a good life with Flex." Flex's mom breathed a sigh of relief. "Exactly. You should have come to terms earlier. Don't cause a fuss." I continued. "Yeah, if I hadn't made a fuss, my dad wouldn't have left, and my mom wouldn't be in a nursing home. It's my fault. I was immature." After all this, I've finally realized how important family harmony is. Flex's mom eagerly agreed. "Shirley, you're right. Family harmony is the key to a prosperous life." Holding the baby, I turned and looked into the distance, coldly smiling. With the nanny gone, Flex's mom had to call her own housekeeper over to help with meals. As for taking care of the baby, that duty fell entirely to me. Flex took a week to deal with the situation with Tina, and I didn't see a trace of him. When I called, he said he was on a business trip. Yeah, right. When it was time for the baby's vaccinations, Flex's mom offered to go with me. As we were leaving, Flex's mom stepped on a thumbtack at the doorway and immediately lifted her foot and started cursing. Which bastard threw a thumbtack here? Who the hell throws thumbtacks in front of people's doors? The housekeeper had to take her to the hospital. We can go tomorrow, Flex's mom said before leaving. It's going to rain tomorrow. I'll go today. Mom, you go to the hospital. I'll be back soon. I took the baby for the vaccinations and called the former nanny on my way. Upset from being fired by Flex, she came immediately when she got my call. I gave the nanny a gold necklace. Madam, I can't accept this, she said, clutching the necklace, looking flustered. You worked hard taking care of the baby. Consider this a reward from me. The nanny thanked me profusely. Tina is pitiful too. If she wants to see the baby, I won't stop her, I added. The nanny said nothing. I'm taking the baby for vaccinations. You can go now, I said. The nanny left. Half an hour later, at the vaccination center, I ran into Tina and her friends. Flex's mom wasn't wrong about the nanny taking advantage of both sides. Tina came running toward me. I took out my phone and called Flex. He was in a meeting. Honey, hurry. Tina and her friends are trying to take the baby. I'm scared. I cried out in panic. Flex was shocked. Where's mom? She injured her foot and went to the hospital, I sobbed. Flex shouted, Shirley, if anything happens to my son today, you'll pay for it. Tina reached me and tried to snatch the baby from my arms. I screamed for help. Soon, people gathered around and someone called the police. Tina and her friends could only watch as I walked away with the baby. I knew she wouldn't give up easily. Fine, I'll wait. I brought the baby home safe. Flex and his mom finally let go of their suspicions about me, and I knew the time was finally right. I arranged through the nanny to meet Tina at the coffee shop where we first met. Shirley, she greeted me with a cold smile. I smiled back. Tina, you really want to be Mrs. Flex, don't you? She sneered. Shirley, you're the only one who wants to be Mrs. Flex. If you really want it that badly, I can help you. But I doubt Flex would want it. By the way, how was life in a foreign country? I flicked my hair. She took a deep breath. None of your business. I sipped my coffee. Don't need to tell me. I already know. Flex didn't give you 5 million, but he still gave you a good sum. But you got lonely. So you started gambling, lost all the money quickly. No money and didn't know any rich guys there. You had to return home with your tail between your legs. Am I right? Tina tried hard to hide her shock and denied it. You're talking nonsense. Your friend told me. You two are besties, right? She knows everything about you. I glanced at her. Bitch, she spat. Tina, without money, everything is tough, I said, taking another sip of coffee. She glared at me. Unless, I paused. What? She asked urgently. Unless the baby is back in your hands, then you've got leverage. Remember, your son is Flex's only bloodline. When Flex dies, he's the only heir. I stood up. Time to go. The baby will wake up soon. I've got to take care of him. Tina's eyes shone. I believe in a gambler's madness. Tina would definitely come back, and Flex's decisiveness would only make her crazier. A week after Tina and I had coffee, on a Tuesday, Flex was working overtime as usual. The nanny called me. She sounded excited and told me that Tina was coming to see the child again, and that I should be on guard. At dinner, my stomach suddenly hurt, so I said I needed to go to the hospital. Call Flex and ask him to go with you, Flex's mom said thoughtfully. I shook my head with a pale face. I can go by myself, Mom. It's just a couple of hours. Please take care of the baby. I went to the hospital and found a resting area. I waited quietly. About 40 minutes later, Flex called. I looked at the screen, then answered. Shirley, where the hell are you? That lunatic Tina came to the house with people and took the kid. Flex was furious. Why can't she just stop? This is unbearable. Honey, if it comes to it, break her legs. We'll pay up if we have to. That way, she won't come looking for trouble every few days. I coaxed him softly. He snorted coldly. I'll handle it. I snorted too. I didn't want to tell you, but she came to me last week. She threatened to kill me, saying she's the real mother of our kid, and everything in the family should be hers and her son's. Damn it, he cursed and hung up. I stayed at the hospital for over an hour. Flex didn't call back. As it got past 8, I got up to leave. In the car, I called Flex's mom. She didn't answer. I called Flex. The phone rang for a long time before he picked up. Both he and his mom were at the hospital. The child had fallen and hit his head during the scuffle. The hospital said they needed to keep him for observation. Which hospital? I'm coming now, I said anxiously. Flex told me the address. I hung up and drove to a different hospital. On the way, I called the nanny with a spare phone. I told her that the kid's life was hanging by a thread and asked her to make sure Tina got to the hospital no matter what. After driving around for nearly half an hour, I arrived at the hospital. By the time I got there, Tina was already there, wailing loudly. I stopped walking. Flex, that's my child. I'm gonna sue you. I talked to a lawyer. We can get a paternity test. That kid is mine. Tina was hysterical. Tina, why can't you just disappear? Flex's mom was very angry. I am the mother. I am the kid's mom. Give me my child. Tina screamed. A security guard started running over. Flex, you sent someone to grab me to kill me, right? You should go die. Die. Tina's voice was shrill like nails on a chalkboard. With a scream, she pulled a fruit knife from her pocket. I watched as she plunged the knife into Flex's chest. Blood sprayed out. Flex's eyes widened in disbelief. He looked down at his chest, then grabbed Tina by the neck. Tina was in a frenzy. She pulled out the knife to stab again when the security guard arrived. They restrained her. I then ran over to Flex. His mom was in shock, completely dazed. Honey, are you okay? I knelt beside Flex, who was covered in blood. He clutched his abdomen, shaking. Doctor, someone help. Please save him. I squeezed his hand, kneeling and shouting. Flex looked at me gratefully. Quickly, they rushed him to the emergency room. Flex's mom continued to curse Tina through clenched teeth. I listened silently, thinking if Flex died, it'd be too easy for him. After over 4 hours, Flex was sent to the ICU. Tina's stab had punctured his lung. If it hadn't happened at the hospital, he would have died for sure. Tina was arrested for intentional harm. The child was observed for a few days and turned out fine, so I discharged him. I wanted to stay at the hospital to care for Flex, but since Flex's mom couldn't handle the baby, I had to take him home. On the 5th day of Flex being in the ICU, I got a call from the nursing home. They said my mom had woken up, but was not doing well, and I had to go immediately. I hurriedly left the baby with the nanny and drove out. An hour later, I reached the nursing home. My mom was on oxygen, clinging to life, waiting for me. Mom, I cried, grabbing her hand as I knelt by the bed. Her eyes turned to me, her lips moving. What do you want to say, Mom? I pressed my face close to her. She raised her hand and pulled off the oxygen mask. Shirley, she called me with difficulty. Mom, I cried out. Flex, he's not human. He pushed me. My mom's eyes were filled with fear. My mind buzzed. I'd always suspected something was off about my dad's death. Now I knew Flex had harmed my mom. Mom, please get better. We'll talk about this when you're well. I choked out. Tears flowed from my mom's dry eyes. Your dad and I were foolish. We always knew about his affairs. I should have urged you to divorce him. I wept uncontrollably. At 3 in the afternoon, my mom took her last breath. That same day, I had her cremated. 3 days later, my mom was buried next to my dad in the same cemetery. After handling my mom's affairs, I went to the police station. Tina saw me. She was rambling. Flex didn't die, right? How is he now? Is he okay? What about the baby? When can I get out? I'll see what I can do, I said calmly. Really? She asked eagerly. I nodded. Leaving the police station, I went to the hospital. Flex is much more stable. If things go well, he'll be moved to a regular ward in a few days, the doctor told me. If he gets emotionally upset, would that affect his recovery? I asked casually. The doctor frowned. Of course, I sighed. He had a ton of work piled up at the office, so I decided not to bother him for now. The next day, I went to Flex's company. Several of the company's top executives knew about Flex being in the hospital. I didn't say much, but hinted that I was there to take care of some final arrangements. Then, I went to the most famous law firm in the area. I spent a lot of money, first hiring a lawyer for Tina, and then having another lawyer draft a divorce agreement for me. Flex was moved back to a regular single room. I stayed by his bedside. When he woke up, he was very weak. He looked at me and reached out his hand. I held his hand gently and told him that my mom had passed away because of him. I told him about Tina, read him the divorce papers, and informed him that I got Tina a lawyer. She would be out soon since she had a mental illness. Flex was rushed back for emergency treatment. Flex's mom was crying hysterically. She even started suspecting that the child was a bad omen, bringing nothing but trouble ever since stepping into their house. Flex survived again. I thought it was for the best. Dying too quickly would be a blessing he didn't deserve. Flex was sent to the ICU again. This time, I refused to hire a nurse and stayed in the hallway, never leaving. Shirley, you're really something. Flex's mom tried to say something nice. Mom, it's my duty. I'm his wife. I acted very understanding. Flex had his good days and bad days. Sometimes he would wake up. I pleaded with the doctor, saying my husband needed emotional support, and I should be allowed to be with him to help him get through this. After an evaluation, the doctor agreed. I put on isolation clothes and sat by his side, continually calling his name. He opened his eyes and looked at me. I asked the lawyer, Tina could be out in a month. Oh, by the way, I exposed your affair with Tina online, I said gently. He glared at me as his heart rate shot up on the monitor. Honey, I've thought it through. When you die, I'm going to be with that young guy Mike from our old theater group. You have no idea how good he is in bed, much better than you. Flex tried to lift his hand and the monitor started beeping loudly. And your son, I continued softly, I'll send him to an orphanage. Don't worry. Flex's hand hit the bed heavily, and the heart monitor began to alarm. It was shift change time for the medical staff. I watched as the line on the monitor flattened. Only then did I press the call button. Flex died with his eyes open. Epilogue. Flex's death was a huge blow to his parents, especially his mom. Flex had been her greatest pride, letting her hold her head high in public. Now, a parent grieving for their child. Overnight, she aged 10 years. Initially, I thought everything would end there. However, I didn't expect Mary to start planning for Flex's estate before he was even buried. She made it clear that all of Flex's assets should go to his son, because he and John would need support in their old age. With tears in my eyes, I said I respected her decision. Half a month after Flex died, I spent a considerable amount of money to get Tina diagnosed with a mental illness, and she was released. Get your son, and you'll never run out of money, I told Tina. Why are you helping me? Tina looked at me, skeptical. I looked back at her. I heard from Flex's mom. All the assets are meant for your son. If you don't get your son back, you'll end up with nothing, just like me. Tina started her battle for custody, her mental illness making her antics even more outrageous. Flex's family was in constant fear, but no matter where they hid, Tina always found them, as if she were a ghost. She didn't know I had turned on the tracker in her phone. Even if she hid in the sky, it wouldn't work. Flex's family tried reporting to the police, but Tina showed the paternity test. The police said it was a family dispute and advised them not to push too hard. With the police brushing it off, Tina went crazier. Finally, a month later, Flex's mom broke down. In a struggle with Tina, she fell into the fish tank in the living room. It shattered, and she ended up falling with her head hitting the sharp glass. She was in the ICU. The doctors said her condition was uncertain. She might wake up tomorrow, or she might never wake up. Tina was arrested again for intentional assault. I witnessed all this, but I didn't feel any joy of revenge being fulfilled. I was exhausted. I decided to leave this place. I went to New York and returned to the theater stage. I poured my soul into my performances, gaining more and more fans. More and more men pursued me, but I felt no passion for love or marriage anymore. In this life, my only longing is to dedicate all my energy to the stage.